No problem.
Hello, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. We are the Google Web Study Club here at DSC, and we are going to be doing an intro to web development workshop. I hope you guys did networking and all that, making new friends and all that. Right here. As I said before, we're going to be doing an intro to web development workshop, led here by Alex. By the way, I'm Felipe Rangel. I'm the lead of the Google Web Study Club. I'm a junior studying software engineering and economics, and now I'll pass it over to Alex.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm a senior at the University of Miami. I have a double major, computer science and mathematics, with a minor in electrical engineering. Today, we'll be going over the basics of web development. We will essentially parse through HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Let's not let those words scare you, but just like a foray into what you can expect, and hopefully I will leave you with some information that you can then pursue later on to really hone in those skills.
How's it going? I'm a computer science major at Spanish minor here at University of Miami. I'm a sophomore, and I'm excited to learn what we have to offer.
Great.
All right then, and let me mention a little bit about the format of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and we can address it then and there. I like workshops to be a bit more interactive rather than just me going over some slides and doing a QA at the end. So then, going over the layout of the presentation, we will go over an overview of web development and high-level overview. And we will do a crash course on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then at the end, we will together build a website live. So I highly encourage that you open your laptops and follow along with me then. Yeah, you can use anything. I will recommend some tools during the live build, and you are feel free to use whatever you like. All right then. So let's ask some questions first. When I mention the internet, what comes to mind? Does anyone want to share?
Or for example, one of those videos, you send requests to the server, and the server will send you data pixel by pixel.
Nice, very good. You wanted to share something? Connection of computers, very good. Anyone else? All right. I think this image does encapsulate what web development really looks like. So on the client side, we observe through the portal of our laptop or computer, we access a certain website with a web browser, which is actually being provided by some server, who knows where. So as you can see here, we're sharing our Developers Club website. Check it out. Can anyone guess what this image represents? Very good. The reason we bring out this image is, I think with the widespread use of Wi-Fi, you think of the internet as something just in the air. But really, Wi-Fi is just a replacement for a wire. So at the crux of it, we have these undersea cables that connect the world around us. And so if you actually observe the packets of information that are being exchanged between your computer and whatever service you're using, you will notice that they actually pass through things called gateways, which are these nodes, as you can see, like these big hubs where all these cables meet and then they move out and go on. And when you're actually sharing information, it's not deterministic. So what I mean by that is you don't know which wire it will actually go through. Since this is very dynamic, at some point this node might have more traffic, another one might have more. So they sort of share the load, and it can go through different ways. Maybe not necessarily the shortest way, speaking by distance. However, it will try to take the optimal route whenever possible. I just wanted to share this image. As you can see, how the globe is connected. All right then. So a simple website comprises generally of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can think of HTML as the bones of the website, the general structure. In the human body, we can make a nice analogy with our skeleton and HTML, just the basics, the bare bones. With JavaScript, we can add some more functionality. It can actually do something now. It can respond to you. It can move on its own. It can produce some values for you. So here we have the muscular skeletal structure. And then with CSS, we can think of that as the skin, where we're actually putting some nice colors, some attributes on our website. So here is an example of an HTML file, and we've highlighted all the different components that comprise of the bones, of the muscles, and of the skin. HTML, JavaScript, CSS, respectively. So this is what HTML looks like. It is generally comprised of these tags. You see these angular brackets. So we call one one piece of this, with the open angular brackets and closed, and some text between them, a single tag. And so you will see HTML is comprised of all these tags. And then this is what CSS looks like, the green part, where we can use to actually give the website some color and some nicer properties. We can format it nicely, give it some margin, some padding, change the font size, put some background images, etc. And then the yellow part might look a bit familiar to you. Who here has taken any programming class? All right, great.
Sometimes when I try to place elements, they don't always get placed where I want them to be.
For sure, it's a very tricky business. Yeah, a lot of trial and error, and with HTML, CSS, you might be inclined to hard code some values, like you have a header, you have some text on your website, and you want it to be in the corner. You could specify pixel by pixel. I want it at the 0, 0 pixel. However, that is not necessarily ideal on modern websites, since we want them to be dynamic. We don't know how the viewer is going to use this website, whether on their phone or on their laptop or on a bigger monitor. They can have different resolutions. So generally speaking, we avoid very hard-coded values. But anyways, in the JavaScript, you can see we have our classic variables, and you can see assignments, we see semicolons. So very similar to Java if you've studied that. But you might also notice it looks a little bit different, since we're actually using inbuilt objects most of the time, rather than doing some pure programming. So this is an example of what a website would look like with just HTML, bare bones. This is my first web page, some text, some bullet points. That's it. When we add some CSS, we can get something like this. Now this looks like a much better website. We have some more color, we have some images, we have changed the font, we have changed the font size, we have an embedded video. So you can make something like this with HTML and CSS. And then if you throw in some JavaScript, you can even make a game. This is actually a short part of a game that I made for a course. I taught a simple course in JavaScript programming, game making. And so hopefully this really works. You can see the playable character can move around, shooting some rainbow balls and defeat the enemy. So what I want to portray is with JavaScript, you can actually add some movement to your website. Okay. Now let's take a look at this website. Okay. So this is a handy website we found called htmlcheatsheet.com. There are many websites like this. It's always good to have some sort of cheat sheet with these things. There's just a plethora of information out there. What's more important though is the general understanding. If you have an idea of what to look for, you can do it. We have Google now. So let's go over these tags as we mentioned. In HTML, everything is comprised of tags. So here, this is the div tag. Div is for division. You will notice there are two of them, and one of them has a /. So tags come in pairs, an opening tag and a closing tag. The closing tag is at the end with the /. And this is very important so that your browser knows when the certain tag is ended. And so essentially with HTML, does anyone know what it stands for? Hypertext Markup Language. Does anyone want to go through those words and try to decipher what they mean? No? Okay. What do you think of when you hear the word hyper? Something big. Anything else? Fast, okay. Yeah, I mean, it shows like movement, you know. It's hyper, it's energetic, it does a bit more. And in text, of course, text comprises in the website markup, we're changing this text and then our language. So with HTML, we can have something more complex than just like a Word doc. So the div tag is used to separate your website into divisions. This is very useful to just encapsulate your website into different components. For example, you can have a main body, you can have like an introduction. And the div block will also allow you to sort of separate them, add indentation. So this is a very classical tag, the header tag. So H1 through H6, there are 6 header tags. These tags are usually used for headers in a website. H1 usually being the largest and H6 being the smallest. You might say why, but that's how it is. As you can see, that's why we have page title, subheading, tertiary heading, and quaternary heading. If you want to try these out as we go along, you can use this website called jsfiddle.net. Here we have the 3 components, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. In HTML, you can type out the HTML. So for example, H1, and then my first header. And if we run this, you will see we have my first header. Well, let's try the H2 tag, my second header. Slightly smaller. And then so on up through 6, H1 through H6. Now, if you prefer slightly more, something more than just an online editor, I really like brackets.io. Visual Studio is also good. I really like brackets for HTML, CSS. It has a very nifty feature. You have like a live website. I believe so. It's been a while, but really what I use this for is for the lightning bolt. And with the lightning bolt, basically it builds the live website. And so certain changes that you make are displayed live. So you don't actually have to go and reload the website, which is a problem if you just use something like Notepad. But if you want to, you can really just do that. You bring up Notepad and you can type it up. We can try it out. So Notepad, and let's do. So first of all, let's write this .type HTML. This is very important to actually go ahead and declare to the browser that this is a document of type HTML. Otherwise, it might not, otherwise it might not realize what kind of file this is. So in HTML, the first tag is always the HTML tag. You want to close this. Just trying to show you that even Notepad works. And then we can do here is just the body. Close the body. And within the body, we can have our H1 tags, header 1. So I'm going to save as. We do want an extension of .html, and we can do index.html. Just going to save this in the desktop. Save. Okay, there's something else. We can rename it to index2, just 2.html. Desktop and 2.html go. There we go. Firefox already recognizes it, and you can see we have our header 1 website. Another nifty trick, if you have a website, you can do inspect page source. So right click and view page source, and you can see all the code behind the website. For example, let's go to this other way. cs.miami.edu. Right click, view page source. There you go. You can see the bare bones of the website, and so on. Moving on, we have the paragraph tag. The paragraph tag, in contrast to the header tag, is used for your main text. So it's going to be much smaller font size and will not be bolded, as you can see that the header 1 is. We can go ahead and try it out here. Paragraph, my first. And you can see it's much smaller. Moving on, the image tag can be used to go ahead and store an image in your website. You might notice here, the image tag does not have a second tag. There's just only one img. The reason is the image tag does not need a second one. So what happens is those special kind of tags, which we just only need one of, because there's no other data we need to provide between tags. There'll be a / at the end. So this is our first look into attributes. So an HTML tag can also have attributes, and these are the other words with the equal sign. So for example, SRC. Can anyone guess what that stands for? Source. Very good. So this is the source attribute, and we can assign it some URL or a relative path within your website, and then you have a image that will be picked up from there. So for example, if we go to this website and copy image link, I will replace this source. Run this. You will see we have a small image due to the fact that we have constrained it with certain width and height. If we remove these attributes, it will be the original size. There we go. Now the out tag, it's used for providing some text if the image is not able to be displayed for some reason. And actually, it's very good practice to fill in the out tag anyways, since for the visually impaired, they can use certain software that actually reads out whatever the out tag says, so then they can have an idea of what was supposed to be there. And then with the A tag, A stands for anchor. You can provide different kinds of links within your website. We can have two types of links. One can be a link to website. So for example, if we do href, and then if we go ahead and copy, and on this one, there we go. Control A, Control C. Control V. And then if we go ahead and close our anchor, okay, let me put some text here. Computer science. Below the image now, we have a link to the computer science website. Yes, so this is actually a security measure by csc.asmiami.edu. So it won't allow us to just go to this link from our website. So there is a workaround to this. We do target, another attribute, and within quotation marks, underscore blank. If we run this, click it now, it opens in a new tab, which I think is, generally speaking, what you want to do if you have a link that is not within your website. It's very annoying when websites don't have this, otherwise you just have to keep on right-clicking or set it as your default, but anyways. Moving on. You can actually provide some formatting within your website through the use of certain tags. So we can have the I tag. And you will see anything with an I is in italics. And then there's also B, bold. There we go. We have some bold text. And then the break tag is also very useful. So for example, let's say I want my word para to be on the second line. We can go here. This is also a single tag, BR. Run, moves to the next line. It stands for break. You can also input video, which is very cool. A little bit more complex since you need to put a lot more stuff in there. And audio as well. There's a lot more in HTML. You can also implement tables with the table tags, and then you have these table rows, and then also another tag called TD, which is table data. You can implement lists. Lists are nice. Let's do a list. So lists are a bit more complex, whereby we start with opening. We start by opening. First of all, we choose what kind of list we want. There are two types of lists, ordered and unordered lists. Let's try an ordered list. With an ordered list, we will now input the items in the list that we want. Any suggestions? A word, please. Computer, okay. Computer. The list should have ideally a bit more, no? So what else? Someone else, a suggestion to add to our list. Can be anything. What, phone? Phone, all right. The things we cannot live without, I guess. Now if we run this, there we go. You see, since it was an ordered list, OL stands for ordered. We have number 1 computer, number 2 phone. If we go ahead and put UL, which is for unordered list, run this, bullet points. There's also another tag called form, which is quite a bit more complex, usually used for some sort of input. But then we also go into the realm of web servers, since we will want to perform some action based on whatever the user inputs. This is also some nice aspects of this website. So if you don't want to go ahead and just hard code it in, you can choose create table. You can choose the number of columns, number of rows that you want, the width, and then when you generate table, it'll give you the HTML code to input. Or for example, to create the image, so you give it the source, any description you want, what kind of style, the width and height, and then it'll generate it for you. All right, moving on. Let's go ahead and take a look at CSS now. So at this point in time, all these elements are pretty bare bones. There's no color. You haven't changed the font at all. So what we can go ahead and do is we can actually use CSS. Can anyone guess what CSS stands for? Or know of? Sheets, cascading style sheets. Very good. So the general format of a cascading style sheet looks like this. You choose whatever element you want to change. So let's just take a look at our header 1. Let's say we want our first header to be some other color. What we can do is we type H1, open braces, enter, and we can go ahead and type the attribute that we want to change. In this case, it's color. We put a colon, put a space, and then we can type whatever color we want to change it to. Let's go for green, semicolon, And there's another important thing to go ahead and do is we need to add a link tag, which will actually tell our website to go ahead and look at, to go ahead and look at this file and then interpret whatever's in there. So the link tag has a relation attribute, what kind of file are we linking it to, and then the source file. So usually it's named style.css, and that is what JSFill does. And so now it knows that, okay, I'm going to go here, look at this, and import any useful information. So if we run this, you can see that our preview has changed to green now. Any other color recommendations? Magenta. That should be hard-coded in. Magenta. Does anyone know how magenta is composed of in terms of RGB? So each color is, 3 values, red, green, blue, values from 0 to 255. Any guesses what the values from magenta are? Anyone know any color theory? It's actually full red, full blue. That's how you get this color. So that means 255, 0, 255. And so if you want, you can actually go ahead and do that. Leave it as RGB and 255, 0, 255. No change, very good. Let's see. Okay, one spaces. We can give it spaces. If I put a 0 here, any guesses? What's the color going to be? Blue, very good. It's RGB, blue. And so this is a full blue, it's like a bright blue. If you want to tone it down a bit, you can do something like 128. It's a bit darker now with a darker blue. Any guesses what 00 is going to be? Black, the opposite. So for white, it's full everything. Another method is to use hash values. So in hexadecimal, I think it's hashtag and then you put F. Yeah, so that's white. 0, black. And so if you really want to dive down and choose a specific color, so for example, let's say I want this Miami green, which by the way, the closest value to it, so colors can have names, like there are websites out there that give names to colors, is British Racing Green. You can actually search it, British Racing Green. We don't want a car, we just want the color. And there we go, color hexa. There we go. Let's copy this. And go ahead and paste this. Control V. Oh, remove the color attribute. There we go. If you want to be very specific, you can go to something like paint. Choose this color dropper. Bring up paint again. Here's my paint. There we go. The color dropper. There are some other tools. What you can do is I think copy image, paint, Control V, allows to paste it. Not really, okay. Anyways, you can use some color pickers to get whatever color you see and get those RGB values. And so if you're interested in learning what kind of attributes these may have, you can just type CSS H1, okay, spaces. These are just examples. CSS selectors. Mozilla, HTML, Jesus. This is a very professional website. If you want to use regarding HTML, CSS, you can search anything you want here. Which one? And then it'll tell you all the attributes. So it says these only include the global attributes. We can go to global attributes. There's a list. So something that is important to us is, for example, start opening CSS stuff. This is a very good website if you want to learn more about and just use as reference. We don't necessarily need to do this. You can just go ahead and H1 type in style. So this is the style attribute, and this belongs to every tag. And then quotation marks. And then you can basically type CSS in here. So you see the formatting is quite different. We have these tags in HTML, and CSS, there are no tags. We have these braces though. So here, what we can go ahead and do is type color, column, and do green. When we run this, it will revert to that sort of pure green. There are quite a few more named colors. I believe there's an olive green. Or maybe no, there's no olive green. But there are names like light green. I think it was lighter than before. You can do dark green. If you can think of some name, it's probably there if you don't want to go with the RGB route. There's also chocolate, I believe. Chocolate. There we go. You can change a lot more things with CSS, not only the color. We can go ahead and change the font family. So this is the font, the styling, colon. Does anyone have a favorite font? Want to share? All right. So generally speaking, it's a good idea to give a backup. So that's another reason why there's a called cascading style sheets. Cascade, you can think of some waterfall, on the rocks. So with a font family, you can actually provide a list of different fonts. So what happens is if the browser cannot find the first font, goes for the second one. Now find the second one, goes for the third one. So the most basic of fonts are these two. Anyone guess what this means or does? This blue word. Any suggestions? Did anyone take French? Oui. Serif. Yeah, I was saying. So with sans is French for without, and serif is actually You see all these sort of extensions on the lettering, like, there's the M and then like sort of lines coming out of there. If I draw, annotate, it will be easy. So for example, I'm drawing an S and I put like these lines here. So this is serif. So these things are called serif. And then if we say without, it means I don't want them. So just give me, the basic letter. And so if we run this now, the font has indeed changed. Does anyone have a favorite font that is serif, that has these squiggly lines? Any recommendations? Yeah, we can Google. Yeah, go ahead, Google if you want. Maybe we can Google. Serif fonts. I think this is for selling us. I'm not interested in purchasing. And then there's the problem of, then your server has to provide this information, since if it's like this proprietary font, it's probably not going to be on the computer of the person who's observing your website. That is the story for another day. We just pull up Word. Take a look at the list there. My document. Let's go for let's go for Baskerville. Or maybe elephant. Elephant sounds nice. JS Fiddle and elephant. There we go. The font has changed. And here, ideally, we put serif. In case if we don't have elephant, they can at least fall back to that. You can also manually change the font size. There are 3 types of units you can use. The classical one is pixels, so we can do maybe 2 px. Run. And I believe it is the exact same size as it already is, so there's no change. Let's do a 64. There we go. As you can see, we've increased the size. We can also decrease it to say 16. Much smaller now. There are 2 more different values, EMs and then REMs. So these are relative units of measure. So H1, usually in a website, is going to be, the child of some other tag. Could be the body tag at the least. So if you put EMs, it will get whatever the default font size of its parent is, and then it will go ahead and accordingly multiply it. So for example, if it's 1 EM, we mean whatever the parent's size is, just keep it the same size, no change. 2 EM, double that. 0.5, half that. And if you use REMs, we mean not just the parent, we mean the whole HTML file. So REMs can be used to have like these relative values that are all equivalent to each other. If you use EMs, then they're dependent upon whatever the parent size was. We can also go ahead and give a background color to our header tag. So for example, the yellow. Now there's a yellow box around it. And I think the background color also really shows that you can think of your website built of these blocks. And that will actually be very important if you want to go for some really hardcore styling in JavaScript. Let's take a look at some JavaScript now. Take a look at the cheat sheet. As you can see, this is your classical programming language. We have if-else statements, very similar to Java if you're familiar with it. Not something too complicated. Though JavaScript is a loosely typed language, so you don't necessarily have to follow the rules. So you might notice there are a lot of semicolons here, which usually denote the end of a certain instruction, not necessarily required by JavaScript. Though I would err on the side of caution and put them so that you explicitly state, okay, this line is over. You have switch statement, you have variables, and variables are also a bit more complex in JavaScript than they might seem. There are many different ways to define different types of variables. There's the let keyword, there's the const keyword, and then you also have your var keyword. Those have to do with scope. If you're interested, they will be important if you want to code something pretty complex in your website. But you also don't necessarily have to use these keywords in JavaScript. And if you just want to play around with simple JavaScript, you can also just press Control-Shift-J, and it'll open up the console on your browser. I think the Chrome one gives us a bit more power. Control-Shift-J, and then there we go. We can actually type some JavaScript here. So let's do a 1+1. Let's give us 2. So this is an interpreter, and you can write any lines you want. There's also this alert method. If you're interested, you can type in some text. An embedded page, a new tab page says, hey. So this is what alert does. And we can incorporate this into our website. Going back to JS Fiddle, you can go ahead and in JavaScript, type an alert, parentheses, and good afternoon. We do need a link as we did our CSS. We can copy this, Control V, actually, it's not the link tag. We're going to use the script tag. Script. So you can actually type JavaScript directly here if you want and not use another file. So these actually represent 3 different files that you refer to. Ideally, this is the route you want to take if you make a complex website. But if it's a simple one, you can just put everything in your HTML file, as we saw in the example with the colors. And in the script tag, if we type an alert, hello, and then run this, hello, okay. And so with JavaScript, you can do a lot more things. You can put in some animations. You can make a whole game if you want. And this is where you'll also use, if you have any sort of input fields in your website, you know, like some text, where you want them to type in some value, and you want people to interact with your website. And you can see your for loops, your while loops, classical things in JavaScript. You can do a simple thing in the console, the other console in Chrome. Let's write a for. I'm going to do something interesting. While true, print is console.log. We are not in Python. Console.log. Hi. Anyone guess what the snippet of code will do? Very good. Very good. Let's see. You can see the number is how many times it's printing this. It's going to be increasing for a while. You can see the fans are kicking up now on my laptop. And Chrome is not letting me do anything. This is expected. So what you want to do is now you will open Task Manager. Yes, it will crash. Or you have to terminate it yourself. Right click and end task. It's dead. There we go. Now, in the interest of time, I want to quickly go ahead and share resources with you. Here I've built Sebastian the ibis, a simple. So yeah, this is a trick. In JS Fiddle, if you want to see your website in full, you want to go ahead and click save. You don't have to log in. You should log in if you want to really save it, but you can do it without. And then just copy this link, Control C, new tab, Control V, you type in show, run this fiddle, and you can see your website now in full and interact with it if there was some interaction to perform. And you can see if I open this link, it takes me to the computer science website. And you can see it in full. So just remember, just type in show if you want to use JS Fiddle. Now let's take a look at this portfolio website. This will all be shared on Engage. So if you want to refer to it, you can. Run this fiddle. And then you can see we have some links here. And if we do a page source inspection, let's take a look at the description, maybe the abilities. This is hiding it. There's an abilities link. So if we go to the link here, it is. Okay, this is the JS Fiddle. It's not my own. So you go here in JS Fiddle. We go to our link, which was abilities. And you will notice in the href tag, I didn't put an actual link, just a hashtag and abilities. So you will also notice these IDs and classes. So when you're performing CSS, it is not necessarily the best idea to individually change properties of a tag. For example, the H1 and changing the color, because it's possible you want to reuse H1 and don't want green to be all your H1s in the future. So then you can give a particular tag an ID if you want to specifically change that. And then, for example, we have sections here, and then you put hashtag, write the name of the ID, and then any properties you want. So here in sections is a division, it's a block of all my links, of these links, and I float it to the right. So otherwise, originally, it was appearing below Sebastian the ibis. Since I want it to be to the right, you can type in float and right. And then class Ideally, I mean, there's no differentiation really between class and ID, but the way you want to use them is class for multiple things, ID for specific tags. And so for class, you actually just put a dot. So for example, this belongs to the class of links. You can see all of these are links, dot links hover. And these are also attributes you can change within JavaScript and CSS. If there's everything you want to do and you're not sure how to do it, just do a Google search. For example, you might have seen with websites, if you hover over a link, it might change color, I don't know, increase in size or something. So this is how it usually goes about. You refer to your link, :hover, which means when the mouse hovers over it, what do you want it to do? So at the moment, you can see my links are green. When I hover over them, they should be orange. There we go. See, they turn orange. Here, A, href, nest, description, abilities, work, etc. And so as I was referring to originally, these are not real links. These are actually IDs. So if we go down a bit, there's a section. So main and section tags shouldn't really worry you. They're just for like formatting. Don't really provide much value by themselves. And I put the ID, for example, description here in the section. And so when in a link, you put the ID or the class, or ID in this case, hashtag description. When I click it, it takes me to the part of the website that has that ID. So that's how you have those in website, like anchors that, sometimes you scroll at the end of the website or web page, and there's like a small arrow, and you click, it takes you back to the top. That's how they do it. You just put hashtag for that. And then usually in a very professional website, when you hover over them, you'll notice there's a slight delay. Here it's instantaneous. So let's go to apple.com. So for example, you notice how there's like this growth and there's also gradient. It's not, instantaneous, like there's a delay in starting and leaving. And then if you really like a website, you just do this, right click, inspect, and you can get different properties that you might be interested. So for example, say I'm interested in the color of this. There should be a color here, background. And you'll see here, these are the properties of the background. And then, for example, right click here, inspect. I get the color here to the text color. And you also might notice in very professional websites, we don't usually generally use absolute. So the inbuilt blues, reds, greens, they aren't really great for the black or white. So if you look at this carefully, this isn't black. Black would have been all zeros. This is actually a dark gray. And you want your websites to be a bit like homogeneous. You don't want them to be stark, contrasting. And so you can take inspiration from these well-designed websites. And so you can do all this. The main thing is to know that you can do them. And then, for example, here you might notice I have actually a LinkedIn link. If we click it, it takes us to Sebastian the Ibis' LinkedIn. Let's look at the bigger one. It's here, yeah. There's also my GitHub. Where did I get these images? Well, there are libraries for everything out there. So you can go ahead and, for example, link to the style sheet, box icons, and then when you name them a particular class, so in my case, it was this BXL LinkedIn. It gives me the LinkedIn image. And then also there's another script called scroll reveal. You can actually just install this in your server or refer to it through the ether. And then we make a new object, scroll reveal, provided to us. I name it SR. And it's a constant, it's not going to change. So that's why we give it a constant variable. And then when you type this method sr.reveal and you type in whatever ID or tag you want, once we go to the website, what will happen is run this fiddle. You'll notice if we put a duration here, races, duration, 2000, run. You see there was a delay in the load of my website. We should also need to save this. Save the number increments. So just go to your website, change the number, 12, enter, run this fiddle. It took a while to load. This takes a while to load. You can take a look at scroll reveal. It's basically used for all this fancy stuff. When you're scrolling, things are flying in. Another resource I would like to share with you, if you go to engage, I think I lost track of it, no worries. Engage. If you go to the Association of Computing Machinery, so don't worry, we are very closely associated with the developer student clubs. There's a small article I made, HTML and CSS, and it goes through some of the things we went over, some things that we didn't go over. And you can actually just go ahead and copy paste all this code, and you have an example website here as well. There is also a link here. There's also some files here, style.txt, script.txt. You will have to rename them. Unfortunately, I cannot upload on Engage HTML files. So it is a text file, but if you observe it, download, let me just open. You will notice this is HTML. And then if you also want, there's also another source. If you just go to my GitHub, my profile, we do have a template here that we use for coding in the dark. Coding in the dark is an interesting challenge in web development, where you're just given the image of a website, and you are supposed to write the HTML, the CSS to make your website look as close as possible to the reference image. However, you are not allowed to run your code. So that's the fun aspect where you write something, you think it's looking right, and so this is an example website I've provided so people can look at different things they can do with HTML and CSS. So actually, this is also a GitHub pages, highly recommended. So with GitHub, if you upload your website to a repo, you can go to the GitHub pages option in settings, and you can actually make it a website. So we go, we have this like meme page, some lists, some links, an animation with JavaScript. The color of the border is changing from green to red. The cat is rotating, and so on. And this does not work on GitHub for some reason, or maybe it will work. No, it doesn't work on GitHub. But you can take a look at this as well. And then finally, this is all front end. There's a lot more to web development, and I think as you learn more and want to do more complex stuff, you will want to go into frameworks to create web servers. One I really like is Flask. So if you learn some Python, this is a very easy way to go ahead and create a web server. Why might you need a web server? Well, if you have an app and let's say you have a database of all your users, that is how you will interface them. You will have a server, they will log in, the web server will receive the information, check it's correct, and then provide whatever information they ask for. So as we saw, W3 Schools also has some things. There's also Code for Geeks. They're nice, but if you want something very professional, do use Mozilla. Also, if there are ever any questions, feel free to join our Discord. You can find everything on Engage. And also kindly do go ahead and scan this to show that you attended. And then this is actually even more important. This is our feedback survey. We also have some more of our links provided, your social media, etc. Can you provide any words?
Yeah. Thank you guys for coming. Just be sure to fill out the survey as well. We also want to take a picture just before we all leave, since this is our first workshop. So just let us know when you finish the survey and we'll take the picture pretty much.
I hope you learned something within the short time we had. The general goal of these workshops is to introduce you to a concept, and then you can go ahead and develop that more. As I was talking with you, we talked about hackathons. I highly recommend them. Hackathons are these 24 to 30 to 48 hour competitions. It's not a competition per se. It's just an event. You know, you can just go and observe workshops. So really geared to software engineering or engineering in general, but even, go ahead. Yeah. So Shellhacks is a very popular one by FIU. Sure. Okay. I'll wait. Can you repeat that? I didn't hear. Oh yeah. So actually, FIU has a very big computer science fraternity called UPE. They have a very active Discord. I recommend going there. They host workshops very regularly. They provide links and other sources that you can learn from. They also have, I think, a catalog of video, like YouTube tutorials, if there's something that interests you. Anyway, Hackathon is a very awesome event for people in computer science and software engineering. Sponsors appear, they might hire you on the spot. So there'll be like a small career fair. In person, they're amazing. Like you get free food, events, like there'll be a gaming section, like they'll have Nintendo Switches, Xboxes, PlayStations. I remember Shellhacks had like legit gaming PCs, like sections. Oh yeah. Unfortunately now, with the situation that it is, wearing these masks, the best resource to attend a hackathon is go to mlh.io, I believe. MLH stands for Major League Hacking. So they are like these organizers and sponsors of hackathons. And generally speaking, an event sponsored by them will be very high quality. They have a huge list. There's a hackathon going on every week. And if you go to DevPost, that is a platform many hackathons use for submission. You can actually see what people are making, and you can use that to go to their GitHubs if you want to refer more specifically and learn from that. But on DevPost, you can see a lot more different types of competition or hackathons. There's something live all the time. And so my recommendation would be for hackathons, just go ahead and sign up for one, you can say every weekend. And then according to your schedule, if you see that this weekend works or not, you can attend it. And you don't have to necessarily compete. They have workshops, you can just go first time learn or just use it for a networking opportunity. or just meet new people and just play games. And once you improve your skills quite a bit, you can go ahead and try to actually demo, that is, submit your project, and you can actually win prizes. So for example, at Shellhacks, the category I was going for was sponsored by a cryptocurrency trading API, and they wanted us to use their API to make a portfolio tracker. And if you won, they were giving out 2 Ethereum. Does anyone know how much 2 Ethereum is about in USD? $6,000. Yeah, roughly 3,000 per Ethereum. So they're also concrete. It's not actually, it being cash is a bit rare. Like it might be in the form of an Amazon gift card, but especially with the rise of cryptocurrency, barring the environment, I don't know what your opinion of them might be. But anyways, they are showing up a lot at hackathons and giving some pretty hefty prizes. Like there were 3 crypto categories, and each was giving $4,000 to $6,000 worth of prizes. But you'll see, MacBooks, Nintendo Switches. There'll be all the things that are toned down. Like this is what I won once. You see, there's MLH, UiPath, a software for robotic process automation. You can automate stuff on your desktop. That's a good souvenir from Shellhacks. So yeah, highly recommend to go. And if you need help, please, contact us on our Discord, and we'll be happy to provide ideas. Hey, go check out this framework, this software, this API.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, Alex, for leading this workshop. And I think you guys have enough time to fill out the survey. Let's just go back a couple slides. Let's just take a picture so everyone can get up on the stage pretty much. And we can all just take a picture. Ryan, could you take a picture? Perfect. Okay. What? Yeah.